I was just going to bring us into class this evening. Thank you guys again for joining week 3 of the Small Business Educational Series with CTA. Moving pretty fast, actually. How's everyone doing? Thoughts, feelings? I see some head
Doing
nods.
awesome. Thank you.
I love it. I like it. Cool. Well, we'll dive right into today. As we know, the housekeeping rules, let's keep our audio muted unless called upon or the Q&A session is open to the floor. We, of course, encourage all of your videos to be turned on. We have really great partners and guests that come in, and part of doing business is folks do business with who they know, who they like, and who they trust. So this is kind of an introduction for some of you to get to know our guest that comes in and talk to us. So allow them to get some FaceTime with you. So the next time they see you out, they're like, oh, hey, that's Chanel. Oh, good to meet you. I remember you from that series. And that's how the relationships begin to build. So encouraging for folks to keep their videos on, but totally understand if you choose not to. Be engaged, ask questions. At any point, feel free to drop your questions in the chat inbox. And we'll capture those questions throughout either the presentation and or at the end of class today. And then around 5-ish, we'll do another stand-up 5-minute break for water, restrooms, etc., or just to stand up and stretch. I realize that we are now spending an abundance amount of time in front of our computers as if we weren't already before, but so I now value the importance of getting up to stretch. So, and then our agenda for today, as always, we're going to go around the virtual room and do our introductions. For our participants of the program, think of your introduction as this is your 60-second pitch to our guest speakers, which oftentimes are prime contractors, right? So take this as opportunity with today and moving forward. One, you all have this handy agenda so you know who's joining us each week. So if you go out there and you find opportunities on their website or things that's related to CTA, use this 60 seconds as an opportunity to pitch to them and get to know them. So today we'll go around the room, the virtual room, for introductions, limited to about 60 seconds each. We'll talk about week 2's discussion on safety plans. If anyone wants to talk about their safety plans and what their processes were and creating their safety plans. And then we'll get straight to today's conversation, which is no guesstimating, nailing your estimates with our partners, Transit Capital Partners. And of course, we'll open up for Q&A, again, throughout the presentation and as well as the end of class. So for introductions, I'm just going to go in order of the names that's listed on my screen. And I'll start with you first, Chanel.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to see everybody returning. My name is Chanel Harmon. I'm the coordinator for Small Business Development and Outreach for Chicago Transit Authority, and I work with Juan Pablo Priento as well as Jamie Neely.
Awesome. Thank you, Chanel. And Jamie Neely, Small Business Development and Outreach Manager with Chicago Transit Authority, supporting you all as DBEs and networking and navigating your journey or your way through CTA's procurement processes. Next, we have our friend Divvy Logan.
Hi, everybody. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
Yes. Oh, excellent. Okay, well, as a railroad and infrastructure photographer, I understand the importance of safety at every turn, every surrounding, especially around construction projects. And anytime you're around railroad tracks, it's important to pay attention. So my mission statement is safety first, safety always, and public safety is my mission. And I use 2 digital cameras and one with an ultra telephoto lens, and it gets me well back from construction sites, railroads, and sites like the RPM, which I photographed yesterday, and I can send you a link if you like, and thanks for having me.
We would like that, Divvy. Well, at least I would. and welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, I'll save our transit capital partners for last, okay? Mike?
Hi, Mike Save with Allstate Concrete Cutting. We're a union concrete cutting and demo company, and we are working right now on the CTA RPM project, doing coring and wall side.
Awesome, thank you, Mike. Javier?
Hi, my name is Javier Cadena. I'm with Studio ARQ. I'm a PM. We're an architectural firm based in Chicago.
Thank you, Javier. Melissa?
Good afternoon, Melissa Fuller. I'm the owner of MTC Properties One. We are a real estate development company where we purchase vacant lots and construct right now residential homes. Next year, we look to start constructing commercial properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Jermaine?
Can everyone hear me?
We can.
Oh, okay. Hello, my name is Jermaine Carter. I'm the president of J. Carter Construction. We're a Chicago-based general contracting firm. We specialize in concrete, curb and gutter, PCC, sidewalks. We also saw cut. We do linear cuts. We don't do like the other coring or anything. And also we have a specialty in masonry.
Awesome, and thank you, Jermaine.
All right.
Marina? Marina? All right, we'll come back to Marina. Curtis, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello, everyone. Curtis Harmon with Fidelity Plumbing. We're a union plumbing contractor for the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois. We're BEP, MBE, and DBE certified. And we specialize in commercial and residential construction as well as sewer contracting.
Awesome, thank you, Curtis. Beatrice?
Hi there, I'm Beatrice Steele with Lawn Care Maven LLC, and we are an eco-friendly lawn care service.
Awesome, thank you. Marina, can I come back to you?
How are you?
Good, how about yourself?
Good, good. I'm Alda Mannion, Garces Contractors LLC. Garces does plumbing, sewer, water, and excavation. And we do all kind of maintenance within whatever plumbing needs. Like, for instance, we maintain Macy's, all the stores of Macy's. And we do from little projects to bigger. We were lucky enough to work on the aerial drainage on Wilson Station.
Nice.
So yeah, so we are a small company, DBE, MBE, WB. Thank you.
Thank you. Lacey?
My name's Lacey Ruther. I'm the president of Illini Drilled Foundations. We're a deep foundation specialty subcontractor. We're WBE, and we do foundations for bridges and cell towers and all sorts of different things. And we're just trying to learn how to do more and better business with CTA.
Awesome, thank you, Lacey. Sebastian, I'll hand it over to our transit capital partners.
All right, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I'm Sebastian Gerza. I'm with Transit Capital Partners as the lead estimator. Before that, I was at Kiewit Infrastructure for almost 9 years. And after Kiewit, I actually went, I'm actually, my home company is Patrick Engineering. So I've been with Patrick for 5 years now and just started on the program team in December. Ever since I joined Patrick, I've been on program level projects, doing mostly construction management and estimating, bringing what I learned from the construction side into the CM and program level side. And hopefully somebody learned something today.
Thank you, Sebastian. We have already. We learned quite a bit about you. Appreciate that. And I have been trying. I can't avoid it any longer, and I don't want to butcher your name. Can you help me out just a little bit?
Gunther Preuss.
Gunther?
Gunther, yeah.
Gunther. Okay, got it.
I'm from Austria, but have been in Chicago for the last 20 years. And yeah, I have heard my name pronounced in all different kinds. So
no, with all due respect, my apologies.
I'm very forgiving. Well, thanks first of all to invite us to participate. It's really exciting to meet all of you, especially for me. I'm also part of the TCP team, but I'm in the controls department, and I usually don't get to see any of our contractors and the subcontractors that our teams are working with in the field. So this is a real treat to actually put some faces to the company names that I know from looking at some of your pay applications and change order requests. So I'm really looking forward to spending the next 2 hours with you guys, and hopefully, like Sebastian said, you can take some good learning experience away from what we have to share today.
Awesome, and thank you. And we really appreciate having you both here. I just saw our Director of Diversity Programs, Juan Pablo, camera pop up. Juan Pablo, can I pick on you to do a quick intro?
Yes, hi everyone. How's everyone doing? Hopefully well. I'm excited to have this new course from our new program manager, TCP today. So really excited to listen in and hope everyone, ask a lot of questions. This is your opportunity to get that knowledge, and please let us know how we can help. So have fun, everyone.
Thanks, JP. All right, guys, my manager is in the room. You have to help me look good, okay, guys? So we're gonna be really engaged today. All right, next up we have safety plan discussions. Anyone want to talk about what we learned last week? What your experience have been with developing your safety plans? Did you use someone else? Did you do it yourself? Were you able to use the template that we received from QIT last week? Any thoughts or feedback?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely, Divin.
Yeah, I went up just to put a little test into action last evening at the some of the RPM sites just around North Clark and Belmont and West Roscoe and North Sheffield. And body positioning, what we discussed some of last week, and taking pictures of job sites is essential. And having the better your equipment is, the better quality, the more efficient, the better it is to get a lot of information in just a short amount of time. So that's why it's important to have good picture takers on your crew.
Got it. So how do you incorporate that piece within your safety plan? So when you have to go out and you have to take kind of awkward or uncomfortable positioned photos, how do you capture that in your safety plan? Or how do you mitigate those risks, right? Your physical being, if something happens.
Well, it's important just to pay attention around like grade crossings. So if you're photographing a railroad track and you have a manifest coming through, you can't cross through those gates, like those platforms when the announcement tells you don't step near that yellow line. They mean it because a train can overhang by 3 feet or more. So if you see it coming, it's really not worth the risk to lean in and get that extra picture or stand on the tracks. You never do that. So it's either you get that good shot or you wait until you find a better position. So safety first always.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Anyone else want to talk about their safety plans or the process of creating it? I'll start picking on folks. Don't make me. All right, Mike, I see you getting close to the screen.
Yeah, we did our safety plan. We do it every year. We have it updated because new things come in like silica and the different things that change. And with the CTA, the most important thing is to become track certified and then to pay attention to the flaggers on the tracks when you're doing any type of work near the tracks or the trains.
Awesome. And I like that you mentioned that you review it every year, right? Because things change. Your experience from project to project, you learn new things that may impact the safety of yourself, your team, or any of the stakeholders that's on the project. So I like that idea.
Well, and it's important because once your EMR goes up, it takes forever to come back.
Yeah.
And we've had our EMR down at 9.91 for 6 years straight.
And for those who aren't familiar, Mike, what's the EMR?
Your EMR, it's what the insurance for workman's comp, it's what the insurance rates you at. So if you have any type of injuries or things like that, they rate you and you get nicked for every time you have an accident or an injury of any sort after it's been investigated. And yeah, so it's important to safety first. And if you can do that, then you'll have a good business and you'll get customers because your EMR is half your bid. It really is, because these bigger contractors, they look at that. It's very important to them that they have a safety-oriented company working on their sites.
So the safety plan isn't just busy work that we're giving you. Obviously, there's some merit in it, right? The more you implement your safety plan, the better you're protected. And then it sounds as though the higher rate that you get and probably the lower cost of insurance or other things that kind of come along with it. So it sounds as though it's a domino effect of protection for yourself in the business.
I don't know about the rates going down. I don't think they even but it's nice to have a good EMR because it gives you, let's say if you had a bad, a 1, your chance of getting awarded a bid is probably 50% or less.
Good to know.
So the higher your EMR goes, the lower your chances of receiving that bid.
Got it. Thank you for sharing, Mike. Anyone else before we dive into today's presentation?
Okay, 2 questions, Jamie.
Sure.
This is one question and one statement. Question is, I wasn't able to log in. Somehow my device was glitching or whatever from last week. And if there was PDFs, could you mail them out? Or you guys gonna mail them out from last week's session?
It was breaking up a little bit, but I think you're asking, can you get the information from last week?
Yes.
Yep, perfect, will do.
Okay, so secondly, as far as the safety plan goes, me being in the industry for 17 years as a union laborer, every morning we come out, and this is what I brought to my team. Every morning we come out, we have what's called box talk. So we have a safety plan. We go by OSHA safety plan. It's actually online. You can go online, get the whole thing, and whatever relates to the specific job that you're doing. It's like box talk things that like we have members of. First, we'll have our foreman start it off, and then we'll have members of the team read from different situations that are in the box talk package from OSHA.
Nice. Jermaine, would you mind sending me a link? I probably can go search it, but if you have it accessible, can you send me a link to that?
Yes, I could.
Thank you. I'll share it with the team as well. Awesome. Who should I, before we're going to go ahead and get started in today's presentation, who should I give control, the clicker to? Guttner or Sebastian?
Me, Sebastian.
Got it. All right, you should have the control and be able to click to the next slide. And then, yep, the floor is yours.
All right. So I just click, right?
Yep. So what happened was I took your presentation, dropped it in our template. So the color and scheme and template looks a little different, but all the information is still there.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining. As we stated earlier, the name of the presentation is No Guestimating, Nailing Your Estimates. Recommended practices for improving estimates for your bids. Hold on a minute. Okay, there we go. Actually, I'm going to let Gunther introduce TCP really quick, and then I'll start the actual presentation.
You're still on mute, Gunther.
Thank you, Rob. So, like you guys already heard through the introduction, TCP is the new program management team for the CTA. We started with the CTA in October of last year. And we have basically three major parts of our organization. One is the infrastructure program delivery group, then we have controls and administration, and then we have the RPM team. And we are basically in charge for the management of this program as a whole, fully integrated with CTA. So in the regular work environment, we would be sitting side by side. Right now, we're sitting on Zoom meetings side by side. The team itself, TCP, is comprised of 3 joint venture firms, and they are Ascent, Patrick Engineering, and Gannett Fleming. But then we also have a significant participation of subconsultants, and you see them listed in the white box, including a number of DBE firms. And these firms are the backbone of our team. They are providing specialty consulting services and complete kind of TCP. And when we heard about the opportunity to present, we were really excited about the topic of estimating, which is a functional area that resides in the part of the team that I'm leading. I'm the Deputy Program Manager for Controls and Program Administration. Sebastian is our lead cost estimator on the team. We have a third presenter, and unfortunately we forgot to forward to him the Zoom meeting invite. So we have done that meanwhile. So maybe we can use another 60-second introduction for Rob Brunetti, who is a Senior Vice President at Patrick Engineering and also serves on the joint venture board for TCP. So Rob, do you want to give a quick intro to yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Gunther and Sebastian. Yeah, I'm very happy that we're able to pull this together, and happy to participate in this discussion. That's really what it is. It's a discussion where we're sharing some of the observations that and knowledge that we've gained throughout the years that we've worked on transit projects and CTA and other transit agencies. A lot of it is a dialogue. So, as we go through this, if you guys have questions or comments or your own observations, we're all here to kind of learn from each other. So, we appreciate you taking the time, and we're here as resources to the CTA and to all of the CTA's partners. That includes the contractors and design teams. So thank you.
Okay, back to you, Sebastian.
All right. So yeah, I'll jump right into it. The class will focus on estimating transit projects primarily, from all the general contractor, owner, and construction management and program management perspectives, each with different perspectives, but we all face kind of the same issues and challenges when we estimate. Estimating transit projects, is obviously comprised of many different things. There's, just like any other estimate, there's takeoffs and quantities, general conditions and risks. The difference with some of the things you might encounter in estimating transit projects are things like site access is different on a transit project, allowable work hours, and associated with that are different types of production rates that you might have to take into account because of the different types of site conditions that you'll encounter. So I'm going to touch on a lot of this stuff throughout. I'm not going to focus in on all of these, but they're certainly going to be a part of the presentation as a whole. So if anybody has any questions, you can type them into the screen and I'll try to address them as we go. If not, then I'll address them at the end.
Hey, Sebastian, one thing I want to just mention as we start is that a lot of this is going to sound like you need to include a whole bunch more in your estimates, and your estimate should be higher or fatter, and that's not really the intent. So just keep in mind as you're hearing all of these elements of this from Sebastian and Gunther, that really what we're trying to do is increase your level of confidence and decrease your areas of risk so that you can really move with as aggressive as you feel necessary, and increase your level of certainty. So just want to lay that out there as a foundation.
Thanks, Rob. That's a very good point. So on this slide, I listed some of the common issues. Of course, there could be a whole lot more than this, but these are kind of like somebody's unmuted. Sorry about that.
Oh, hold on. I think my headphones. Take these.
Some of the common issues that we might encounter are you might have the correct quantity of material, but you did not price the correct materials. An estimator may assume CTA project standards are similar to other local agency standards, such as CDOT, IDOT, or Metro. Estimate does not account for enough required staff to administer a contract. For example, a full-time quality and safety lead or other contract administrators. Estimator may not be familiar with transit projects. Estimator may not be familiar with construction environment in Chicago. And estimator may not be familiar with the CTA contract. And then critical constraints such as restricted work hours, site access, limits of operations, and inefficiencies common in transit projects in the urban environment are not considered. Still getting used to the scrolling of this slide. It's moving a little slow, so I might skip a slide by accident. So in today's key topics, I mentioned it prior, but I'm going to touch on takeoffs, indirect costs, deliverables, and then I'm going to get into access, available work hours, outages and track access occurrences, schedule, and risks. So when we're doing our takeoffs, I mentioned your estimate may include the correct quantity of the wrong material. So as an example, you might have priced enough rebar or reinforcing bar, but the specifications say it needs to be galvanized. So you really want to know and understand the specification requirements. And it sounds obvious when you say that at first, and really, understanding what the specifications call out in the contract are what's going to help you out here. We've also encountered times where we've seen contractors who've worked on a similar project, but for a different agency, so you kind of price it the same way. And again, you want to understand the specific project specifications and don't assume that CTA specifications are similar or the same as other agencies. And then other things that you might want to have in your takeoff are testing requirements or factory acceptance tests, which once again ties to understanding the specifications. You're not just buying the material, you want to understand what needs to happen in order to commission what you've installed. That can be something as simple as concrete. Doesn't necessarily have to be a piece of equipment that gets tested in a factory. So for example, if you're placing concrete, the specifications are going to ask for a series of tests and documentation to prove that what you've not only submitted and have been approved was installed, but that you installed it properly following ACI. So that ties into your estimate because it takes work in order for that to happen. Whether it's through a field engineer or a competent person like your superintendent, things like this are sometimes disregarded and could add money to your estimate. And then lastly, regarding takeoffs, estimate quantities are incorrect. So maybe you don't want to just look at the drawings and call it good. Do the specifications require additional stock of materials? Did you rely on a legend in a drawing to tell you the quantity of the material that you're supposed to install, or did you check your own quantity? CTA projects are lump sum, not unit price. So, you know, if you're used to bidding IDOT work and you see a legend that has a certain quantity, that doesn't mean that that's all you owe the CTA. You owe what's on the drawings and you owe what's in the contract. So that could be another potential area where you can get in trouble when it comes to takeoffs. And then finally, did you rely on the knowledge of a previous project, which I keep going back to because when I was a general contractor, I heard that before, where a subcontractor would say, "Oh yeah, you know, I've done this for CDOT a million times. There's nothing to it," but then they're overwhelmed or just surprised by a certain requirement that they didn't expect. So, you know, the key takeaway to takeoffs is just know and understand the specifications as well as your drawings.
Sebastian, just to add on a little bit to that item number 2, where you kind of warn about taking experience from a different agency and applying it one-to-one on another agency. I would almost expand that to also include cases where you have worked on a CTA project before and it's a similar scope project, but you just have to always go back and build your estimate from new. It's really dangerous to kind of go back to a similar scope and adopt the previous estimate, and you miss out on taking into consideration the uniqueness of either one of these two projects, the one that you previously already worked on and then the new project. So it's always really a good idea to look at a project as something unique and build it up from the bottom and use your experience and your historic information as a reference, but it should not be kind of the skeleton of your new project estimate.
That's right. So I'm going to move into indirect costs. Doing an assessment of your indirect costs can be critical to the quality, performance, and profits. It could be challenging to determine the balance between competitive bidding and assigning adequate resources to successfully manage a project. So you want to carefully consider indirect costs, and that's going to require a good understanding of the general requirements of the contract. Really, you'll always be in a stronger position if you make thoughtful decisions about personnel commitments before submitting your bids. So let's start by seeing if you guys can name the critical phases of a construction project. Not all at once, everybody. How about you, Mike? You're the contractor I see up on my screen, and Joe picked on you a lot last week.
Critical is beginning of the project is always very critical until everybody starts to get a flow, and then the closing of the project, the closeout, would be the two most important pieces, because you don't know what you're getting into in the beginning, and you're getting close in the end, and there's a lot of finishing up and finalizing and checking and verifying and all those goodies to close it out. And paperwork, a lot of paperwork.
Yeah, you pretty much nailed it. Pre-construction, construction, and then I have punch list and closeout separate, and we'll get into that a little bit. How about, can you name some of the tasks that can be expected of the contractor in each of the phases? So again, it was pre-construction, construction, punch list, and closeout. Anybody want to try to see what kind of activities can take place in the pre-construction phase of the project that you might want to consider in your estimates?
How about bid proposals, like a materials bidding?
Okay.
We'll say coordination meetings.
Say it again, Curtis.
I'm sorry.
Coordination meetings, coordinating with other trades.
Okay, meetings. What else? Let's try to think about what needs to happen before boots hit the ground. You have NTP and you're ready to go to work. What processes does the contractor have to take care of that they either have to do themselves that would take time, or they have to hire somebody to do?
Permits.
Tracks, and then certifications for badging and everything like that. They have to go through all that stuff before they can even hit the ground running.
All right.
Think about last week's topic, maybe.
Hello. So I noticed I never did a job with I haven't did a CTA contract yet, but I know with IDOT, before you can do anything, there's two things you got to do. You have to contact the resident engineering, IDOTs, and the primes if you're a sub, and also you have to contact the person as far as your material list before you even pour any concrete, which is my specialty. But before you pour any concrete, you got to contact IDOT or CTA. I don't know CTA's process. That's why I'm here learning. But I know with IDOT, you got to contact somebody before you even pour the concrete. They got to come out and test the prime. If that's one of the prime's pay items that the prime is handling, you have to contact the prime so they can have someone to come out, test. It's a lot of stuff that goes on before you can actually start, or you should do before you actually start.
Right.
Thank you, Jermaine. Sebastian, before you jump in, just wanted to give you some answers that was in the chat box. Marina said to walk through or the material submittals. Lacey suggested to get dig numbers, and Divya also reminded us that the materials testing and bidding based on site requirements may be some initial.
Got it. So yeah, pretty much any sort of planning activity that could take place, as well as preparation. So I kind of have them listed out here. Pre-construction, a few examples are submittals, which Marina mentioned. For CTA requires writing up process plans, and you're also going to need write up and plan your schedules. Maybe not always. With subcontractors are typically turning in schedules to the general contractors and coordinating. So I heard somebody say coordinating. So all of these things in the pre-construction box, whether you have somebody like a field engineer or a project engineer putting together submittals and process plans, this is all stuff that takes time, and you're going to have to account for these types of things in your schedule, which means you're going to end up paying for it. Construction, we all know you need field supervision, field support, and project management. One of the things that's unique with CTA is that all projects require a full-time safety manager and a full-time quality manager, and that's expected of the general contractor. So unless you guys general a job, you won't be expected to meet that requirement, but a lot of times the general contractor will at least have you assign a competent person. And then for punch list, early documentation, qualified personnel doing the punch list work, and prompt resolution of the punch list. And then for closeout, look into your specs to see if there's any sort of CTA personnel training that you have to do for any perhaps HVAC equipment or some kind of equipment that you install, or some kind of specialty item. Sometimes that's in the specifications. You have to turn in equipment O&M manuals, and then of course to close out you need test reports and certifications of the materials and equipment that you installed. So that's kind of the indirect costs you want to look at on the personnel side of the project. What are some other indirect costs that should be considered when estimating a construction project? This one's a little easier. We got a long list that we can develop here, but maybe if anybody wants to chime in.
How about travel for crews and possible interventions such as weather, natural disasters, prevention from getting to the construction site in time? So some costs built in for travel.
Very good. Anybody else?
Amount of time that you're allowed to work on that project per day.
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
The amount of time allotted to you to work on that project per day. Instead of, let's say, if it's regular, you try to base it on 8 hours, but in reality, you're allowed 6 hours. You should take all that into account prior and make sure that you have that covered.
Yeah, we're probably going to get into that, and I actually have a whole section on allowable work hours in this training. I'm thinking more like, mobilization or field office, small tools, stuff like that. Trucking.
Insurance.
Anybody else have any ideas?
Insurance costs.
Insurance costs.
All right, here are a few more. And of course, it's not limited to this list. These are just some ideas of other indirect costs. So you got your field office, small tools and supplies, maintenance of traffic, mobilization, factory visits and travel, which was mentioned. Rail safety training is a big one. Getting CTA rail safety trained, if the project is over a year long and you're on that project for over a year, you might have to consider rail safety training 2 times. Parking, other training. I have rail safety. I doubled that up, but it could be any other type of training. Maybe you have to take a OSHA training specified for this job, like a HAZWOPER or something like that. And of course, the people working for you, not only do you pay for the training itself, but you pay for their hours to attend the training. Storage of materials, staging of materials, temporary structures, insurance and bond, handling of materials, and then trucking. loading and unloading, hauling, and dump fees. So moving into the deliverables section, deliverables and understanding what you owe in your contract is critical, and understanding additional costs that should be considered and the time it takes to produce deliverables. So, excuse me? Did somebody ask a question? I'm sorry.
I think that was an accident, Sebastian.
Oh, all right. So we have submittals and shop drawings, writing of safety and quality plans, process plans, commissioning plans, schedules. Here's attic stock again, which ties back to your takeoffs. And then you have daily reports, inspection reports, and photographs. So why are these important in an estimate? Well, all of these things take a significant amount of time, and obviously the larger your contract, the more time it's going to take. The more complex your scope of work is, the more of these deliverables you're going to be dealing with. And it's pretty common not to get a submittal or a shop drawing approved the first go around. So you want to account for, you want to account for the right amount of time it's going to take for you to produce a submittal or shop drawing that's going to get approved. So if it's a complicated shop drawing that requires a lot of coordination, you might want to consider that. Safety and quality plans. Again, every project, the general contractor is required to produce a safety and quality plan that adheres to the contract. Oftentimes, the contractor will allow their subcontractors to basically, what am I trying to say here? The general contractor will allow the subcontractors to piggyback off of the safety and quality plans. But if you do that, you have to be fully aware of what's in that safety and quality plan and understand that you're basically going to be bound to that plan. Otherwise, writing up your own and submitting and getting that approved is what's required by the contract. Process plans are a big one for the CTA and deliverables. You know, actually, I think let me go through these in order. I wrote a little bit about each one of the top three. So I'm sorry about that. So back to submittals and shop drawings. You want to, once again, understand the requirements of what's required in the submittal. I'm going to use pouring concrete a lot because that one happens on nearly every job, and it sounds like we have a couple of concrete contractors in the group. You know, concrete's fairly simple, or at least it could appear that it's simple, but CTA has some pretty strict requirements for what they want to see in a submittal before it gets approved. And that includes the shop drawings. So you really want to read and understand the requirements of what's required. You know, do they want to see rebar drawings? Do they want to, how detailed do they need to be? What kind of additives are you putting in your concrete and what's allowed? Make sure that you understand what you're submitting and ensuring that it is acceptable per the contract. Coordinate with the general contractor and the subcontractors on shop drawings when necessary. And then managing submittals and shop drawings can easily turn into a full-time job. And that's kind of what I was saying before, you know, understanding the level of effort that's required to manage the process is key. So if you have a complex scope of work that might require extra time in developing the shop drawings needed, to satisfy the contract, and same with the submittals.
Sebastian, just to add on to the submittals, I would say that they are probably also one of the main sources for early schedule delays that we see on projects. The whole submittal process is a complicated one to coordinate. So like you said, it's very important to have this well coordinated between the subcontractors and the general contractor, but then also with the owner side as well, and the design team that is working for the owner on the project.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Gunther. And I should probably mention, the CTA contract states, and this is true on every contract, at least as far as I'm aware, that CTA is allowed a 21-day review period for submittals. So if you turn in a submittal and CTA takes 21 days to review it and provide comment, and then it comes back as revise and resubmit, well, you've just, you may encounter another 21-day review period. And perhaps that kind of thing may not be considered up front. So, you might be putting together your schedule and your personnel schedule. You have a 21-day review period and you call it good. But in reality, what can easily happen is you add 21 days. You might end up delaying your project because your submittals weren't approved, and it could happen a second time. So, key is to understand the requirements and taking into account the complexity of the required submittals and shop drawings. So safety and quality plans, I already touched on this a little bit. So you want to understand the requirements of what's required in the safety and quality plans. Keep your certifications current. CTA contract requires general contractor to have full-time safety and quality reps. I already mentioned that. So, and you want to designate a competent person to enforce your plans. It is a CTA requirement. So again, this ties back to the estimate in the sense that you're probably going to have your competent person or your designated safety and quality person. And if I'm not positive on this, but I think CTA does not allow the safety person or the quality person to be a production staff person. So your safety guy, or I'm sorry, the quality person can't be a production staff person. I think the safety guy can be like a foreman or superintendent, but they do have to be designated as the safety competent person. So it's just something to consider when you're, again, looking at your indirects, and this is how it ties back to, having a individual for safety and quality is one thing, but then having somebody draft an approved safety and quality plan and then administering that and enforcing it is another. And then I started talking about these, so I left off 2 slides ago on process plans. Process plans is something that might be new to some of you. It's I don't know that all agencies require process plans. I know that in some cases, like IDOT, for example, they'll require an erection plan for beams or specific plans for critical operations. On CTA contracts, process plans can be something as simple as pouring an ADA sidewalk at a bus turnaround. CTA really wants to understand how your work is going to impact their operation and their customers, and understand that you know what it's going to take to get the job done as safely as possible, with and understanding what kind of impact there will be to the CTA, and helping CTA understand what the impact will be to them, so that they can be prepared for it when your operation starts. So writing process plans isn't something that's taken lightly, and it does take a considerable amount of time. So if your superintendent's out in the yard managing delivery of materials, who's writing the process plan? You know, it's just something to consider is, are you going to have a complex process plan? Are you going to have just one for your operation, or are you going to have several? Commissioning plan, kind of the same thing if it's required. This is, again, a plan that would, you know, you're not just installing material, walking away from it. You're putting together a plan for what you've installed and what it's going to take for you to get that turned over to the client. So understanding what it takes to commission anything that you've installed is also a key component in estimating. And then on top of everything else, you have schedules that have to get turned in. There's look-ahead schedules, there's monthly schedules, and then there's your overall project schedule that has to be updated. And then, of course, coordinating that with the CTA or your general contractor or other trades. And then other deliverables include attic stock. Daily reports and inspection reports are required. And of course, photographs. And then again, you know, with any of these, it's not just a matter of producing them, it's getting them uploaded to the project site. So these all sort of tie back to your indirect costs. Who are you going to staff to do this work?
And when Sebastian mentions upload to the project site, he's referencing CTA's eBuilder system. That's a program management information system that is used on all of their infrastructure projects and RPM. And it's a shared website basically for the project team where you have a folder structure and you're uploading all the documents that become a record document for the project. There are different processes, business processes that are automated using the system. You will get training on that system actually from our staff, from the TCP staff, also user support. So that's another tool that will be used to make sure that collaboration is happening, information sharing is happening, and that processes are moving at the right pace.
All right. So I noticed it's about 5 o'clock. Did we want to take a 5-minute break before I move into the next section? I'm right at the halfway point, believe it or not.
Oh, perfect timing. Yep, it's 5 o'clock. Go ahead and get some water, restroom, stretch, and then I'll just head right back in at 5:05, and then we'll dive right back into the presentation.
All right.
All right, guys, it's 5:05. Can I bring you all back to the computer screens, please? Awesome. For the folks who aren't on video, can you just give me a shout that you guys are back to? Awesome. All right, Sebastian, I think we're ready for you.
All right. I think I got some of the boring out of the way, and now we'll get into the fun stuff. So access. Understanding your access is a critical component in how you estimate, plan, and execute your work. You want to consider the location of the work that you're performing, as well as the surrounding area and the level of activity in that area. An example of challenging access, and I would say this is a very simple example, is, I've said it before, repairing a section of ADA sidewalk and active bus turnaround. That can be challenging. The reason I use this as an example is because, well, repairing a ADA sidewalk, generally speaking, isn't overly complicated, but what could complicate that is whether or not CTA is going to leave that area open. Is it near the station entrance? Is CTA going to allow you to cut off access during working or during regular business hours, or does it have to be done at night? How active is it? Is it in a residential area or is it in the business district? Things like that you want to consider. You know, any one of those things can affect how you end up pricing this, what kind of productions you're going to get, what goes in your process plan, etc. So again, I'm going to pick on a couple of people here. Can anybody help name examples of challenging access that contractors could expect on a CTA project? Or I'll broaden it a little bit and ask, what's an example of challenging access that you've encountered on a project in your lifetime or recently? How about, unless somebody chimes in, I'm going to start picking on people.
Beatrice?
Thanks, Sebastian.
I'm sorry,
I have one that I was observing yesterday up in Lakeview. And there are a lot of potential access challenges that RPM could encounter on those, in between those three lines, red, brown, and purple. There are buildings just on either side. There are three very busy streets. So if an incident happens on any one of them, say a structure fire, a bad wreck, disruption in the rails, a derailment, that could certainly challenge contractor access.
Thank you, Divvy.
Yeah. You're welcome.
I was going to pick on Beatrice. You've been quiet today. Lacey, I know you've been chatting via the inbox.
So we actually had a pretty unique situation today. We had to track a piece of machinery 2 miles down a country road. And since it's on a country road, we have to use plywood to protect the road. And it took 4 hours to get from where we had to unload the equipment to where we had to do our work. So that's definitely a unique access challenge.
Definitely. Did you think it was going to take that long?
Yeah, we've had similar situations where we have to track miles across fields for transmission lines or things. But the what made it harder is being on the actual road and having to protect it with plywood and just having to like make sure the guys don't get tired picking up and moving plywood all the time.
The most challenging access example I have to share is I was a tourist going to Venice one day, and I observed how they're doing construction there, and they have to bring in all the materials, everything, all the equipment on these little boats in the channels where they're in the middle of all these tourist boats. It's just a crazy operation, and I just cannot imagine how to estimate for a job that is constructed in Venice.
Yeah, no kidding. I had a similar encounter that Lacey had. We had to get a man lift into the business district, but we couldn't get the lowboy in through the business district in the particular area we were in. So our superintendent thought it'd be a good idea to drive it from our yard to the site. And the key word there is drive. You don't drive man lifts. You operate them slowly and in small areas. But we traveled a distance of about 2 miles, and this was a CTA project. It did take us a long time. But what ended up happening was that it overheated and hydraulic fluid got all over the road. And before we cleaned it up, a couple of bikers slipped on it and caused a minor accident. They were fine, thankfully, but it could have been a disaster. And so this kind of goes also back into safety. But accounting for, how to get equipment in and out of a tight area, it could be something as small as a man lift, or it could be a drill rig like Lacey has, or it could be a coring, a core drill, a heavy core drill that requires, heavy lifting or carts or even a small piece of equipment to get in. So I bring up coring because I wrote down that it looks like Mike, you do the concrete cutting and coring. If you've ever worked in a CTA tunnel, getting your core equipment downstairs could be a process, especially if they don't let you leave it down there overnight. So anyhow, I'll move into the next slide. Unless anybody has any other interesting stories of access.
We did crack chasing in O'Hare for about 8 months, 10 months on a runway, and we're scheduled jumping runways between plane schedules. They would shut a runway down for, an hour and a half so we could crack chase an area, and we had to have it cleaned up and off the runway and sealed and jump to another runway that they closed down. So we were hopscotching around, and they were closing runways down for us to do this. And then they would change up. Nothing was in stone, because you know how that works at the airport. They give you a plan, but they skip 3 and then go back to, it doesn't go in order as planned. And that's pretty scary, because you don't want to leave any type of slurry or anything on those runways when the planes are coming through it.
Yeah, that would be scary, especially with my depth perception. It looks like a plane's coming into your runway when really it's three over. You're wondering if it's really closed down or not. So some access challenges that you might encounter on CTA are on the right of way. You'll see ROW as it's commonly called. And in the right of way, if you've done rail safety training, you'll know that there's live third rail. It's not as scary as it looks, but it is a very dangerous area to be around. It doesn't make noise. It doesn't make a humming noise like some people expected. Every time I go to rail safety training, I hear the same thing. It just looks like another piece of rail that's out there, but it can kill you in an instant. Moving trains, on the other hand, are loud, and if you don't see those, it's, although they're loud, you could be also working in a construction area that might have sandblasting or next to a highway where it's also loud and you may not hear it coming. So CTA makes sure that if you're working on a live track, you have flagger protection, and they'll sound a very loud air horn to make sure that you turn and face the train or get off the track or whatever you're doing on the right of way. Loading, unloading, staging materials on the right of way, coordinating with other trades and contractors, and the highway. So all of these can pose certain challenges when you're trying to determine how long it's going to take you to get in and out. And that's people, material, equipment, tools, etc. In stations, a couple of access considerations are pedestrian movement. Obviously, if you're working in a station that's rehab and it's left open, then you want to consider pedestrian movements and also phased closures. So CTA will let you work in certain areas. Typically the drawings will have an idea of what kind of phasing you'll have, but you're also open to developing your own phasing plan as long as it can get approved. But this is just an example of, you know, let's say you're replacing all of the light fixtures under a canopy. Well, you might know how long it takes you to replace them all if you're able to do it all at once. But how do you consider your production rates and your allowable time to work in that area and getting your equipment and tools needed in a certain area, and then moving all that stuff in the different phases in your different closures throughout the life cycle of the project? Did I skip one? I thought I had another slide on access. Oh, I did. I skipped right through this one. So tunnels. Tunnels are pose loading, unloading, and staging material challenges. Understanding that gas-powered tools are prohibited in the tunnel. So if you're working, if a tool that you use is typically gas-powered, well, you'll have to spend a little bit more money for a hydraulic tool. Maneuvering through an active station to reach the job location is another big one. So if you're just doing something within a station in a tunnel that's near the station access area, I got to plug in my phone before I get disconnected here. And then platforms, working near a leading edge or on the right-of-way during regular train schedule under flag protection. You want to consider noise control and dust control if you're working on a platform, but you're in a residential area. And at platform level and below when there's a risk of dropping materials and tools below. So sometimes you'll be working on the edge of a platform. Maybe you're replacing tactile edging, or if you're quarrying something and you have a lot of dust and water and you're planning on cleaning that off the platform, well, you can't just blow it off the edge of the platform like you could a sidewalk, because there's likely somebody underneath you, so you have to take that into consideration. All right, so I'm moving into available work hours. Specifications, the CTA specs and the contract will dictate allowable and available work hours for certain construction operations. It's important that you read and understand available work hours and coordinate with GC and other contractors. These are obviously essential to crew productivity and efficiency. So generally, you might have a specification that allows you to work any time of day, but there could be certain activities that are limited to certain hours depending on where it is. Never assume that you have available work hours in any given location. You know, just because it worked on one project doesn't mean it's going to be the same on another project, even if they're both track projects. Every project is tailored to the unique needs of the CTA and their operations and the surrounding community and the people. So here's a very simple example of a note and a drawing for a substation roof replacement. So you'll notice this is a general note and a drawing, and they have this little note here that says access to the roof and building is limited to 7 to 3:30 p.m. weekdays. So if your contract says you can work 7 to 7, well, this note just superseded that one with your access to the roof. And then in addition to that, you have to discontinue heat welding 1 hour prior to the end of every shift. Why is that in there? Probably because heat welding could potentially be a fire hazard, and CTA wants to ensure that nobody leaves the site and there's a potential fire or something like that. And again, this is just one example of you know, a very small operation. That's a substation roof. These notes can be sprinkled in throughout the specifications or the drawing. So it's just, you really want to be careful and know and understand what your available work hours are. So I have a couple of other examples of available work hours. We have track access occurrence, or TAOs as we call them. This is an example, is a 54-hour weekend line cut. I'm not sure if there's any contractors on the call that have had the pleasure of working on a 54-hour weekend line cut for the CTA, but it is pretty, it's pretty awesome when there's a lot of stuff going on, and sometimes a very large area. It's almost always on the weekend. You know, sometimes these line cuts are extended through the week, but if you have, I saw Mike raise his hand. They are fun, but they are also very critical, and you do not want to. You really want to consider really everything, and that starts by putting together an hour-by-hour schedule of your activities. A couple of things that aren't inherently obvious are things like power down and power up. So maybe coordinating with a general contractor who has likely done a weekend line cut before will tell you how much time to account for power down and power up. So the specs might say your line cut starts at 9 p.m. on Friday, when in reality you won't be starting your operation until 10 or 11 p.m. because of power down. Same with power up. They might release, you might have to release tracks back to service at 4 a.m., but you have to allow time for power up. And of course, a lot of times there are liquidated damages tied to these milestones. So if you're not able to return tracks back to service, you could be penalized for it. It's always a good idea to consider having additional resources to ensure that you get your operation done, whether it's standby or maybe somebody gets sick. They don't want to be sick. They really want to be part of your operation, but they just couldn't make it. You really want to make sure that you're staffed up and ready to go. And I have piggybacking on here. Sometimes the general contractor won't think of it. And sometimes I actually was on a project where we didn't really think to include a general contractor on a piece of work that was much easier to do during a line cut because it wasn't critical to line cut, but it ended up making their life much easier, and it made the operation safer, and they were able to piggyback, and at the end of the day, everybody was happy. So try to, you know, whether it's you're told that it's not relevant or whether you don't think a certain line cut is relevant to you, you might want to look and really consider, could it help you somehow, and could it help the project? Same with now moving to station platform partial closures. A lot of similarities here, but the key is to understand the restrictions around partial station closures and setting up appropriate MOT and barricades. Whether or not you're allowed to leave them, leave the barricades up is something that you want to find in the specifications, or do you have to take down on a nightly basis? So an example would be setting up tarps for sandblasting or something like that in the loop. You have to have a plan for, can you leave your barricades up, or can you take them down? Can you have something that's an efficient way of putting things up or down, and account for setting up and taking down and all the efficiencies associated with that. And then finally, will your work require flagger protection, and will your work halt when a train is approaching? So generally, anytime you're working within a certain distance away from the right-of-way, you will need flagger protection. Even if you're not right on the tracks, you could be working on a platform, you could be replacing, again, light fixtures, or you could be painting, or you could be coring anywhere near the tracks. You will require flagger protection, and in a lot of cases, they will ask you to stop, stand up, face the trains, and wait for the train to pass before going back to work. So just understand how that'll affect you. Oh, there I go, skipping slides again. Just make sure I didn't skip two. Okay. So we're getting close to the end here. I have next on in my deck is schedule. Obviously, schedule is important for every construction project. And I don't want to try to teach anybody how to put together a schedule. I just want you to understand the types of schedules that are required in a CTA contract, what, you know, how it could affect your pricing and other constraints to consider in the overall scheme of your project. So CTA requires 5-week look-ahead schedules and monthly progress schedules. Again, with the track access occurrences, you have weekend outage hour-by-hour schedules, where literally you write down what you anticipate doing for all 54 hours of that shutdown. CTA resource schedule. So flagger requests are huge. If you miss your window on a flagger request, you won't get flaggers, and there's not much you can do about it. You'll have to wait until the next time you're available to do a particular piece of work to get flaggers. And then, again, the weekend outage schedule. So you're not much of a difference between the hour-by-hour schedule and the overall outage schedule, other than you might have several weekend outages, so you'll have to include what work you're doing and which outage, so that you can account for all the outages that you're given. It doesn't only cost the contractor money to do work over a 54-hour shutdown, it costs the CTA money. So that's why there's only a limited amount of occurrences that are usually allowed on a contract. Oftentimes the general contractor will bid the allowances. So CTA's bid documents might say you have up to 10 weekend outage occurrences that you can use. And it can, you know, if the contractor says they can do it in 8, then they'll put down 8, and there's a cost associated with each one, and that will be included in the bid price. But just understand what your general contractor is bidding and let them know what you need in order to satisfy your scope. And then other constraints to consider are milestones, making sure that you can get your work done with all of the other subcontractors that you're coordinating with, or are, you know, set to do work before or after you. Phased work, which we kind of already discussed with station phasing and closures, or platform closures. Winter conditions, are you able to do your work in the winter, and how will that affect you? Inclement weather, you know, if you're working outside and you're in the middle of tornado season and you've got a bunch of tarps up, is that really the best time to do your work? If that's the only time, you know, consider what it'll take for you to get it done safely. Coordinate with GC and subcontractors. I sound like a broken record here, but I know that many of you are subcontractors, and you're probably already doing coordination with general contractors and subs, but ultimately the general contractor holds the contract, and you'll want to make sure that what your plan is jives with what their plan is, and ultimately that it works for you and the client. Don't assume. And then a big one for CTA is the Chicago event schedule. There's you might get a contract that allows you a certain amount of track access occurrences, but you're not allowed to do it over certain Chicago events, or they won't allow a closure of a certain section of track or a station during certain weekends. So pay attention to that schedule as well. It really does put a limitation on how much work can be done and when that work can be done. So plan it out in advance. Same with holidays. Will the CTA let you work over a holiday? Generally, I believe the answer is yes, except for during the winter moratorium, which is basically through, I want to say, the entire month of December into the new year. CTA has a moratorium where they won't allow station or platform or track closures. And then, does your estimate have the crew needed to get the job done in the time allowed for your operation? That's most critical, again, with your 54-hour track access occurrences and your line cuts. So one other thing that I kind of want to mention here, that it's not necessarily a schedule item, but it could relate to your schedule, is if you're doing a critical operation, let's say, and you have a crane, what happens if that crane, or let me break it down into more general terms. Let's say you have a special tool, an expensive tool that you use on your operation, and it shuts down during a 54-hour weekend. Well, did you consider potentially having another one on standby, or maybe having a mechanic on standby during a 54-hour weekend? These are the types of things you want to consider in your estimate before submitting. And again, I'm trying not to make it sound like we want you to fatten up your estimates. These are just things to help you mitigate the risk of potentially losing money and having a disastrous weekend. All right, and then I think this is the last topic here, but we're talking about a little bit of risks, which really throughout my presentation, I've identified certain types of risks associated with some of the topics. But what are some of the risks that should be considered in your estimate? I actually just talked about this, but the spare tools. What if a specialty machine breaks down during critical working hours? And you see how that ties into schedule. Now, on-call support staff mechanics or manufacturer's reps. Let's say you're starting up a piece of equipment that's needed before you turn the section that you have out of service for the weekend back to the CTA. Do you have a manufacturer's rep on standby that can help if something goes wrong? Is it necessary? Or will it help mitigate your risk? When you're actually bidding the work, how about your subcontractors? If, let's say, you're subcontracting a portion of your work, did you only get one quote, or did you reach out and try to get multiple opinions on the cost? Long lead items. Make sure you understand whether or not your material is available readily, or, you know, I actually have a good example of this for something recent. I've never seen rail and standard OTM take longer than just a few weeks. Almost everybody that you would typically call for rail parts has it in stock or can get it to you pretty quick. And something that I haven't really mentioned in this topic that's worth considering and should be considered, honestly, I have no idea how to consider it, is the pandemic, and that's COVID-19, obviously. We have, I can't talk about the project too much, but we were told that there's a certain piece of rail equipment or rail material that is now in an 18 to 22 week lead time because of the pandemic and availability of resources in the manufacturing field. So it's definitely worth considering if you are working during this pandemic, and just understanding how it's affecting you. Honestly, even, and this isn't a joke, but I was looking at doing a small project, my own house, and I've heard that the wildfires out on the West Coast have more than doubled the cost of lumber. And it's true. If you go on Home Depot's website, see that 2x4s have nearly tripled in cost. So long lead items could be one risk, but just understanding how costs can fluctuate as well, which I don't have on here. And have a plan B. Think of all the things that can go wrong during your operation and talk about them with your contractor. See if they have any ideas for how to mitigate some of those risks. And at the end of the day, just know what you can do in order to offset or mitigate or eliminate your risk. Milestone and LDs. Talked about this one a little bit. There could be liquidated damages associated with not meeting certain milestones, and that could be a critical schedule milestone, or it could just be the end of a weekend outage. Noise and dust issues. Make sure you understand what the contract allows and what the community allows. Are you doing a sandblasting operation in the middle of Rogers Park? Weather delays, we've already talked about, and of course community impacts, which also ties into this noise, dust issues, and other things. Do you have the support of the community to do the work that you're doing? Sometimes, generally, yes, but I've never been on a job where everybody is happy that we're there. So just understand where you're working, your surroundings, and how it impacts the community. Sorry if you guys heard a loud crash. I apologize for that. And ultimately, the takeaway on the slide is to discuss those risks with your GC before finalizing your bids. See if they can offer any input. Hopefully, if you're a first timer on a CTA project, the same won't be said about the GC that you're bidding for. It's always a good idea to get your feet wet with somebody with a contractor that's already done this before, but of course it's not 100% required. And here we are, the takeaways from today's session. We have in bold here, build the job on paper. So what we're trying to say here is put it all together and understand and try to have your plan all thought out before you submit your bid. It's really the key element in ensuring that you'll have a successful bid and estimate for the project. Have the right quantities of material. Understand the indirects, the management and temporary works. Use the right equipment and crews, and develop a schedule with setting your production rates. Understand and follow all contract requirements and be comprehensive. And that wraps it up. So I guess I'll leave the floor open to any questions. I don't know how you guys did it previously. Do you just type the questions, or do we just want to see if anybody wants to chime in?
Yeah, I encourage anyone to chime in, or if you feel more comfortable typing it in, we can grab it that way. Any questions, guys and gals? So you think about the estimating, right? There appears to me. And so thank you, Sebastian and Gunther and Robert for the information. Some of it was a little new. I am 3 months into CTA, so I learned a lot about CTA and how we do business. So the information was very valuable. So thank you for that. But what I learned was that there are just so many intricate details, variables that that affect your pricing, that affect your estimates. And, you know, with government typically being lowest bid, how does a small business or how does a DBE kind of navigate that slippery slope, right? Being comfortable assessing the risk and planning for it financially, but also making sure that their bids are coming in lower for the hopes of actually winning. Any thoughts? I know that, Sebastian, throughout the presentation, you mentioned you're not encouraging to inflate the estimates by any means, but it is a slippery slope. Any thoughts or suggestions on how they can navigate that piece of it?
I can
Can you
address
repeat that?
Sebastian, if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the goal is to create a community of contractors, subs, and primes that get good at doing the unique requirements and elements of the CTA work. And as you get good at it, you actually start differentiating yourself from, you know, the contractors that jump in and out of CTA and a whole bunch of other work and kind of roll the dice and maybe get into financial trouble and so on. But when you get good at these unique elements of CTA, you actually get a leg up on the pricing, you get a leg up on the schedule. A lot of challenges with the project is just having a predictable plan, a predictable project so that you can price it with confidence. And a lot of the things that were presented by Sebastian today really affect the schedule as much as the price. All of these things still get done by all the contractors. It's just how long does it take? How many submissions of submittals do they have? How many weekends do the management team have to work through because they're inefficient in doing it the first time and so on. So being able to really think it out might appear to drive your number up, but what it really does is at some point you get really good at it and you get an intuition on how to work in and around CTA property, and you become a repeat and repeatable contractor, and that ends up being your edge over time too. You gain more knowledge, you have more data in your database, you have relationships with the client and the CMs and so on, and your efficiency starts going way up, and of course your costs start going down with that efficiency.
Thank you, that was helpful. Anyone else with any thoughts or questions for the Transit Capital Partners?
I see Divi asked a couple of questions, but I'm not sure if I can answer those.
How can an extra staff photographer to help RPM? Good questions, Divi. I may not have the immediate answers to those, but I can definitely do some homework and circle back if that's okay.
I had a quick question.
Hi. Yes, that's fine. I'll look forward to networking with you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay.
Was that Curtis?
Yes. You briefly mentioned, I guess, if you never worked with CTA on a CTA RPM project before, partnering up with a contractor who's maybe has worked with them before. How is there a program or something that you guys offer where you can provide a list of other contractors that work with CTA that we can approach them and say, hey, you know, we're looking to bid on particular work? can we come in on this project with you or give us some advice on what things that we need to know in order to properly bid? Because like you mentioned, I guess, what do you say, 52-hour rail, unless you've been on the CTA project, I wouldn't know what that is. So how to properly bid things like that.
Curtis, was that question for CTA or the Transit Capital Partners?
Transit Capital Partners.
Yeah, actually, it sounds like a good question for CTA. I know you guys have held programs where you kind of get everybody in a room and do sort of like meet and greets with, you know, contractors have tables set up and, you know, pretty much all are invited to come and introduce themselves and give kind of a understanding of what they do and vice versa. Also, I know CTA advertises projects regularly. General contractors advertise projects even the old-fashioned way in the paper, and you know, it's always a good idea to keep your eyes peeled and understand what's being advertised and by who, and who are some of the key players. So, you know, generally I'd say when CTA puts out a contract or a bid out on the street, they'll also include kind of like a site walkthrough or an initial meeting where pretty much everybody is required to sign in, and then you'll have at least one point of contact for anybody that's looking at that particular project. I think that's a good start.
Sorry, I initially thought that the question was coming towards CTA, but then it kind of shifted a little bit. So I second everything that Sebastian mentioned. And I'll add to that, a lot of government contract and CTA and beyond, a lot of this information is public data. And so going to our CTA website and looking up previously awarded contracts, identifying who won those contracts, that can help build your prospect list of potential primes that may be looking at CTA contract opportunities. As Sebastian mentioned, we oftentimes put on outreach events, whether it's very specific to a contract. Sometimes we may do general ones just to get you all in the room to talk, because what we also realize is that sometimes it's this chicken before the egg or egg before the chicken. If it's too close in time, sometimes it's just a little too late, right? Because folks have already built their relationships and started conversation. So we oftentimes try to put these outreach events, which is actually a good segue. Tomorrow morning, we have an outreach event tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. It's a meet and greet for our non-revenue rail vehicle maintenance facility on 63rd Street, about a 70,000 square foot facility. It's a 27 and 30% spend goal on design build. And we have 4 primes that are going to be presenting who are interested in going after the opportunity. So, and we had the pre-bid meeting last week. So many touch points, Curtis, and I don't know if there's a such thing as exhausting all of them, right? Because the idea is just getting FaceTime, especially in this virtual world. We're not able to cultivate relationships as we once were, right? So just trying to play, just getting FaceTime, being involved, getting into the know by attending either these outreach events, or you can, like you mentioned, just kind of doing the old school outreach, you know, by finding out who our primes were and are, and then following up with them independently, sending them your capability statement, obviously requesting meetings to talk about opportunities. And then looking at our buying plan, right? To always suggest to the DBEs, these primes, they're called on 100 times a day saying, hey, I'm an MBE, I'm a DBE, I'm a WBE, how can I do business with you? And so I think it can be to your benefit if you come to the conversation with some tangible opportunities, right? So whether it's with CTA or not, but perhaps there are other opportunities that you notice in the buying plan and CTA's buying plan, and you call on Sebastian and say, hey, I know that you all have done XYZ with CTA in the past. I'm looking at this opportunity that's projected to come out in 6 months or 12 months, whenever it is. I'm wondering if we can have some conversation about it and just kind of build the relationships that way. A very long-winded way, Curtis, of saying there's a host of opportunities that we try to create for you all, even in this virtual environment, to make sure that building those relationships to get on teams.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
There are also some contractors, general contractors, that offer to enter into mentorship, protege relationships with minority or DE contractors, subcontractors. So that's another venue maybe for you to explore. I'm sure there are some local that offer that, and I think that's a great way for a smaller business, a younger business, a business that has not worked in a certain field of construction, to partner with a larger organization, learn from them, and also learn from them what business opportunities you can undertake together in the future.
Thank you, Gunther. And yes, we have at CTA, we have a mentor protege program. We don't particularly do the matching for you all, but we try to create environments like this where you have conversations and then you kind of go offline and build those relationships and then circle back to us with a mentor protege agreement. But you're absolutely right. That's another way that you can leverage the capacity, the experience, the network contacts of the larger prime by concurrently building your capacity, so that, you know, while it's a mentor protege this time, you build capacity, perhaps it's a JV next time. I'm also thinking about JVs and teaming for contracts, right? So sometimes DBEs on the larger side of the DBE scope, on the more experienced side on the DBE scope, sometimes there's opportunities for you all to team as prime contractors. Team to go after as a prime. So yeah, so many different options to explore. If you have any questions about any of those, or just, feel free to follow up with myself, Chanel, or even JP and Juan Pablo. And if you need the registration, Chanel, would it be possible, can you send out the event flyer and registration to the team today?
I'll do it right now.
Thank you. So you'll have that. So you'll have that. And if you can attend, feel free to jump on. Any other thoughts?
Is the recording of this?
The recording of this?
Yes.
Yeah, we record every session, but we haven't figured out how to distribute the large files just yet.
Okay, because Sebastian would love to play his whole role through this to my employees a couple times so that they understand what the contractors are looking at, so they have a bigger idea of what goes into these jobs, and instead of rushing, they need to, pay attention to those details.
And that's huge, right? Because you can say it until you're blue in the face, but if they hear Sebastian say it, it's like, oh, okay, yes, we have to do it, right?
Yep.
So we'll figure that piece out. We're launching our YouTube page. I'm not sure how long that'll be before it's complete, but that's where we will house some of our video tapings. But in between time, Mike, I'll figure out how we can get you a copy. Cool. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Awesome. Next week we have On Schedule and On Budget by Span Tech. Also working on the RPM project with CTA. So be prepared for that conversation. Same time, same place, next Tuesday, 4 to 6. Feel free to follow up with the Transit Capital Partners. By the way, let's give them a round of applause and say thank you guys for your time and presentation today. And again, if you have any other questions as it relates to CTA and our diversity team and any other outreach programming, one-on-ones, feel free to schedule some time with Chanel and I, even if it's just to pick our brains, explore, give feedback about this. We're here as your advocates, okay? Awesome. Well, thank you guys again, Transit Capital Partners. I will see our classmates next Tuesday, and hopefully some of you all tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.